This match didn't work because it fooled anyone. That's the part that makes it impressive. A lot of us knew what we were watching. We knew the Grande Americano thing was very silly. We knew it started as comedy, and it was pure parody. But by the time that mask versus mask match was over last night, the joke was not the point anymore. The mask was. That is when the match became bigger than the gimmick. Because last night, a lot of fans didn't just watch a mask versus mask match. They felt why mask versus mask is serious business. Welcome to Pro Wrestling Quickie. I'm Tristen Law, semi-retired pro wrestler and your host. You don't have much time, and neither do I. So let's have a quickie. Let's really talk about El Grande Americano versus the original El Grande Americano in AAA. Most people had a pretty good idea who was under the masks anyway. The match was about whether the mask itself could become important enough for us to care. That is a much harder trick. When a wrestling story starts as comedy, the audience gives itself permission not to take it seriously. We laughed at the idea, we enjoyed the bit, we understood the joke, and that's all fine. Pro wrestling needs that sometime. Not everything has to walk into the room as serious as a heart attack. But the challenge is this: can you take something silly and make the consequence feel real? That's what WWE did with AAA. They took a parody, they put it inside of one of Lucha Libre's most serious stipulations, and then they made everyone live with the consequence. Mask versus mask is not just a wrestling stipulation. It's bigger than loser leaves town or hair versus hair. It's not the same as title versus title. In Lucha Libre, in case you didn't know, the mask is the identity. It is pride, it's reputation. It's the face you choose to show the world. So when the mask is on the line, somebody's not just losing a match. Somebody's losing protection. Somebody's being exposed. Somebody's identity changes forever. That's why it worked. Think about if Batman had to reveal he was Bruce Wayne to the world. The wrestlers didn't treat the mask like a prop. And the Mexican crowd that sat there didn't treat that mask like it was a prop. The crowd mattered. You can feel it. They were not just watching moves. They were reacting to the stakes in real time. And as a wrestler, I can tell you that matters more than people understand. When you're in the middle of that ring and the crowd is electric, that is validation. That is the answer to why we do this to our bodies. That is the reason to why we take the bumps, why we fight through the pain, why we keep going when your body's asking, why the hell did you sign up for this? A crowd like that tells you this matters. And last night, that crowd helped make that match matter. They authenticated, they made it feel real. That's the difference between a match that is just performed and a match that becomes the moment. The wrestlers made the mask feel serious. The crowd made it feel sacred. And that's where the whole thing flipped. Because in the beginning, yes, this was funny. El Grande Americano, original El Grande Americano, two masked identities fighting over who gets to be the real one. It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but wrestling can do that. Wrestling can start ridiculous and end emotional if everyone involved commits. And that is where both men deserve equal credit. One man had to fight like losing the mask would destroy him. The other had to fight like keeping the mask meant everything. That balance matters. If one guy plays it too goofy, the match falls apart. If one guy treats the stipulation like a joke, the audience we never get to cross over. But both of them committed. They wrestled like they didn't have an identity prior to wearing the masks. They wrestled it like being the only El Grande Americano mattered. And when the final bell rang, I was not thinking about how silly the premise was. I was thinking, wow. Because by then, the match had done its job. It took us from laughing at the idea of Chad Gable and Ludwig Kaiser under a mask to respecting the consequence. That is pro wrestling. That is storytelling. Not just the move, not just the finish, not just the reveal, the journey. We went from this is funny to, oh, this actually means something. And that is also where WWE and AAA's relationship gets interesting, because WWE basically had a main roster talent, two of them, at the center of a major AAA story without making the show stop and scream, look, WWE superstars are here. They didn't lead with the branding. They didn't over-explain it. They let the masks do the talking. That is smart. Because if you present them only as WWE guys visiting AAA, then the story is only about the crossover. But when you present them as masked characters inside AAA's world, the story becomes about tradition. That's the big difference. WWE did not just use AAA to show off names. They used AAA to let a different style of wrestling teach the audience in real time. And that's the part I really appreciate. A lot of American fans, we already know mask versus mask was serious. I'm not saying this is new information to everybody. But after last night, Anybody who watches this mask and follow the story will understand it better. And even people who missed the show woke up to the conversation on social media this morning. They woke up to the clips. They woke up to people talking about it. They woke up to some people asking why these comedy mask characters suddenly had everyone reacting like something important happened. That's how you know it worked. The match traveled. The story left the building. And when a match does that, it means the audience didn't just consume it, we carried it. That is the win. Not just the finish, not just the unmasking, the conversation after the match. Because now when we hear mask versus mask, we're not just hearing a stipulation. They're thinking about identity. Because now, when people hear mask versus mask, they're not just thinking about a stipulation. They are thinking about identity, about consequence. They are thinking about what it means when the mask comes off and the man underneath has to stand there exposed. Chad Gable and Ludwig Kaiser both deserve credit for this, equal credit, because this whole entire story could have been disposable. It could have been a goofy side story. It could have just been a meme. Instead, they turned it into a main event. They made the comedy serious without killing the comedy. They made the parody matter without pretending it was never a parody. That is a very hard line to walk, and they walked it. So is it working? Yes, because this match did exactly what wrestling is supposed to do. It made you care about something that sounds absurd when you explain it to somebody that's not a wrestling fan. That is the whole magic trick. Two men in masks fought over who had the right to keep being El Grande Americano. This, it just sounds insane. By the end, it felt like identity, pride, and consequence. That's why this match hit. Triple H treated the mask like it mattered. The wrestlers performed like the mask mattered. The crowd reacted like the masks mattered. And eventually, everyone watching had to respect that the masks mattered. That is the lesson. A parody can get people in the door. A stipulation can raise the stakes. But commitment is what makes it real. The joke was American. The consequence was lucha. My name is Tristen, and that's your Pro Wrestling Quickie.